Yeah, my name's Mindy Capaldi. I'm one of the associate deans, and CSM Steve's the other associate dean. And my background is in mathematics and statistics. Specifically, my PhD was in, unlike John, who was applied topology, the pure side topology of algebraic topology. But then after I graduated and finished that up, I switched more into math education and have really focused more on education research since then. I have been at JMU for about a year and a half now, started August before last, and I came fresh from the NSF. I did a 2-year rotation as a program officer there, and I'll tell you what division and stuff later on, but that was where I was right before coming here. Before that I was at Valparaiso University in Indiana as a math faculty. And so when I do any sort of presentation or teaching now, I try to make it kind of interactive, right? So I hope you'll indulge me. I might treat you like students a little bit. I have a couple of activities planned to let you do things so you're not just listening to me talk all the time. So we'll do that as we go along. But stop me at any point with questions, interject at any point, especially Steve, chime in at any time. Because a lot of these slides I took from our presentation we did last year together. So, yeah. And I'm going to go over the application structure and evaluation procedures. So that was the title I was given. I kind of took that as, I'm just going to talk through, to me, what the process is for building the proposal, getting it submitted on time. One of our activities is going to be building a proposal timeline. And I'll end with talking about the review side of things, but I'm very glad that Gina's here, and she mentioned that she has recently served on career review panels, because I have not served on a career review panel, and so it'll be really great to have that expertise and perspective in the room too. So I can give the more general view of the review panels and tell you some of the specifics from for career, but I don't have that personal experience. All right, so I'm going to start big. Quickly get down to more of the career-specific stuff. And some of this will be reinforcing things that Lauren did in her presentation too. So the NSF, one thing I wanted to ask, and maybe you've already asked this, but how many people have submitted an NSF proposal before? Okay, great. And so you all can chime in as well. Yeah, Thayer has gotten funded. If you've submitted before, this may be a lot of review, but even what I've found is, even after working there, they're still always changing things about the submission process. Like they just came out with a new personnel document that you have to do, and so it's good to kind of be reminded of what the current status of things is at the NSF. These are all the directorates at the NSF. To me, they're like colleges at a university. Science and math size. This is the newest directorate. It just got launched, I think it was like 2021, so it was the first new directorate, I'm pretty sure in decades, if I remember correctly. And it crosses the other directorates. It's supposed to kind of bridge everything. Similarly, the career program is across all directorates. And within each directorate, there's divisions. So the directorate that I worked in was the Directorate for STEM Education. It used to have a different name. This was renamed while I was there. And these are the divisions within the EDU directorate. Specifically, I was in the undergrad education division. And so these are like your departments within the college. Now what's pertinent to career, especially, is that you are going to identify the directorate you're going into and a program that you're applying to. So this is within the division that I worked in, undergrad ed. These are some of the programs that they had. IES is one of the biggest programs in our directorate, and I think maybe one of the bigger programs in the NSF. And so you're going to identify what matches most closely with your research agenda, probably conferring with a program officer, program director to verify that or get guidance if you need it. But you'll pick a program and specifically apply to that program. You just put an extra piece in the title, career, to say, hey, career proposal here. So let's focus more on career, which to me, when I was thinking about this, I was like, this really feels like a choose your own adventure program where you're like, oh, I'm going to go for this program and decide where I want to apply. Okay.
Saying it's an adventure is playing a positive spin.
I try to be positive about things. A very work-intensive and perhaps stressful adventure, but it can pay off tremendously. So there's two big, really important documents you're going to want to pay attention to from the get-go. One is the solicitation, so you're probably aware of that. One thing I would note about this solicitation, that 22 that's in the number identifying it means this went out in 2022. Solicitations get updated, and it could be updated with a new solicitation going out up to 90 days before the deadline. And they could even shift the deadline to make sure they give you 90 days. And so what's up posted right now may not be the solicitation that you apply under. It could be. Maybe they're happy with this one. But it might not be. And so I would say, the deadline for the next deadline, I think it was July 23rd. At the end of April, we'll be checking to make sure, what the updated one is. And the other big document is, we call it the PAPG, P-A-P-P-G. You might know what that stands for. I always forget. It's like proposal, I have it on the next slide, like proposal awards, procedures, something guide, I don't know. But it is like the NSF's, I have this on the slide too, syllabus. Like it tells you everything about proposals, post-award, all the rules and procedures, and a new one of those went out, I think in 2024. So you want to make sure you have the updated one there. There's what the acronym stands for. So you want to look through at least the proposal part of that guide. It is a very long document, so I would maybe not worry so much about the post-award at this point. Just focus on the proposal side. Because there are things in that aren't explicit in the solicitation that you have to do or include in your proposal. For example, your project description has to have a section on broader impacts and has to have a section on prior NSF support if you've had prior NSF support. And you don't want to forget that, because reviewers will notice if you don't. Well, I think the broader impacts you can't even submit if you don't have. But if you don't have the prior NSF support, they'll notice. It also describes supplementary documents. And I listed them here. I can describe them more later. There's a lot of extra documents besides kind of the main project description. And a lot of those are described more fully in the PAPG. Now, here's our first activity as we delve into your program that you're interested in, career. What are some career-specific requirements that aren't true across NSF? So PAPG is NSF-wide, right? But a solicitation can override that or add requirements. I don't know if I have enough printed versions here, but I printed out the proposal preparation part of the solicitation. You can also look it up online. I like having hard copies of things. And I thought I'd give you a few minutes to look through this, highlight or circle, if you have a writing utensil, and see if you can identify some of the. All right, I have one extra copy.
Somebody just
See if you can identify career-specific requirements. Some of them have actually been brought up already today. I don't remember if all of them have. But what is something in here? Does anybody already know one off the top of their head so we can get an example going? What's something specific to this program?
We talked about this a little earlier in the slideshow, but directly including educational.
Yes. You have to have both research and educational connections and descriptions. That is one of the extra review criteria that is added to career. Normally NSF has two main review criteria, and I have this on the later slide, intellectual merit and broader impacts. For career, there's that third education and research piece. Is that right, Jen? You had to explicitly address that? Yeah. So, take a minute or two. We'll see how long we want to do this. See if you can find other requirements. Especially things that if you don't do them, will get get you returned without review, like they don't even look at it. We don't want that.
Is the departmental letter?
Yes, that's one. And this is one where if you don't have it, return without review. They won't even panel it. That is what it says in the solicitation. So it's pretty critical.
Data management plan.
So that data management plan is required, but that is one that's actually required of all proposals. So it's not career specific, but it is a supplementary document. Yeah. I think the only supplementary document that's required just for career is this one.
So I'm not sure I'm reading this right. It's so on page 12, it's co-PIs listed on the cover page. So you can't have a co-PI, and if you list one, it's no good. Yeah.
All right, you'll find the ones that I found. It has to be a single PI proposal. You list a co-PI, return without review. I think those are some of the main things.
Project title has to start with career.
Yes, that was it. Are you looking at my notes? I knew there was something else. This is a small thing, but the title is going to start with career. I guess this should be capitalized. Colon, and then you have the rest of your title. And, we can stop there with this activity, but you'll want to make sure you read through the solicitation very carefully to check for these things that they're expecting you to do that can be kind of easy to miss sometimes. And I would say, I always read through the solicitation, when you're first thinking about a proposal. But before you submit, like that last week of the submission, read through it again, just to make sure. I was just submitting one earlier in January, and I forgot it was for the IUSE program, and that program specifically requires a list of participants as a supplementary document. And that was new since I've worked on the program, and I almost forgot it. And I was like, this is terrible. So just read through it again, before you submit to make sure you don't miss anything. Okay, let's keep going. So, how do you determine your program? Well, it might be obvious to you if you feel like your research really, aligns with a particular program. But even then, I would say, talk to a program officer anyway. I think Gina was kind of hitting this earlier with her comments that it's a good idea to reach out to a program officer, one, to verify the program, but also to, as you were saying, give them the one-pager and get some feedback. If you have what you would consider an interdisciplinary project or research agenda, I think you can contact multiple program officers. So you do have to choose a specific program. And this is just a screenshot of some of the, contact people that they have listed. I just like to have pictures on my slide, so that's why I put that there.
Question.
Yeah.
Sometimes some program officers, they do serve on multiple roles, right? They're on
Yes.
multiple teams. So I had an experience like when I'm trying to find one and they happen to be the same for two different grants. Is that common?
Yeah, most program officers work on multiple programs, and if the person that you contact ends up not being the right person, they should direct you to someone else, and that happens all the time. They might say, oh, you should talk to this other person and send you that way, and so it's okay if, maybe you're like, well, let's try for Mimi from the Division of Computer and Network Systems, and she's like, nope, you really needed Al Medina. That's okay. That's not a big deal. Other questions so far? and this is reiterating some things that we've already said. I think it's really helpful, and sometimes program officers will specifically ask for a one-page summary document that tells them something about what you're wanting to meet with them about. Now, these are generally what POs can and can't do. Specific program officers might go, may not follow this, but generally they should be giving general advice. They can't tell you, oh, this is a really great project, I think you're likely to be funded, and they're not going to go into that. But they should be able to give you advice on common errors, general guidance on the proposal writing, that sort of thing. And of course confirming your program fit.
I do have a question about the educational activities, since it's an important component of this. So, can the educational activity be look like that, for example, for my research in diabetes, if I target that community and provide some education related to the technology that I am going to work on or build upon and how that helps them in their day-to-day life, can that be considered as an educational activity, or it needs to be integrated as a part of your classroom teaching? How do I understand?
I think it's broad. I don't think it has to be specific to your classroom. They definitely have it not that narrow, I'm pretty sure. As Lauren mentioned earlier, there will be another person from our College of Education who's career awarded that will be able to answer this better than I can. But to me, so one of the things that can be difficult for people that proposed to the division I was in is a lot of it was educational related research or pedagogical, faculty, professional, all that kind of research. And it was very mixed up with the research part of it and the kind of broader impacts educational activities. And we would see just a really large spectrum of the sort of broader impact educational activities that people are doing. So I think it can be community outreach, it could be classroom stuff, it could be to other faculty. I mean, I imagine it's, as the NSF usually goes with, for broader impacts, it's broad. But yeah, bring that up again when Zorene's here, and you can also ask a program officer, say, are these allowable educational activities? That's never bad.
The other thing I would mention on that one is, sometimes when I've reviewed those sorts of things, there's a disconnect between the intellectual research part of things and the educational part, and they don't really match very well. They're almost in two separate proposals. In my experience, reviewers look at that, and they want to see things that are more holistically interconnected.
Complement each other.
Yeah, complementary in the two components.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you. I do have two more questions. I don't know if they're relevant or not yet. One of the questions is about prior NSF support. So if my postdoctoral research was supported by NSF, do I write it as a prior
If you
NSF?
were a PI or co-PI on a project that ended within the last 5 years or that was ongoing in the last 5 years, you have to list it. And there's guidance on what you have to say about it. Basically, you're going to put in award number, amount, timeline, what years it was going on, and then you have to briefly describe the intellectual merit and broader impacts. And then if you have publications or presentations that came out of it, you'll cite those in that section as well. But that's, I think, pretty well laid out in the PABG for what they're looking for. Some programs have additional requirements, but I don't think Career does for that section. Yeah, other question?
Yeah, so this is probably the last one. So talking about, since we are at JMU, it's an undergraduate school, and there are other, R1 Institute professors who are also applying for a similar grant, and they can demonstrate that having a big lab with grad students and all, they can accomplish more. And as Dr. McDonough mentioned, that having preliminary data would definitely be helpful. So can we also include prior projects that have been successful with undergraduate researchers who were on the similar lines or similar project as like I'm
Yeah.
building upon my prior research? How do I?
So one place you could describe that is in your so there's two supplementary documents, a biosketch and synergistic activities. And if it doesn't make sense to include it in the project description, you could at least include it there to show that kind of extra evidence, I would say. Gina, do you wanna?
I feel like for the main part of the project, it would be best that you show that you can do, that you have done, it might not even be specific to your grant, but something here at JMU with your students and your space and instrumentation and all that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Okay, let's talk about the proposal process. So here's a general outline of how things work. I mentioned that 90-day lead into a deadline. So technically an opportunity is announced 90 days before, at least 90 days before a deadline. You'll submit, proposals received. I'll put the career deadline up there. One thing to know, when it says 5 p.m. Eastern, it means 5 p.m. Eastern. They do not, unless you're in a region that's like horribly impacted by a hurricane or something that came up once when I was there, they don't give exceptions. If the internet goes out in all of Harrisonburg and you can't get your proposal submitted because you waited till the day of, too bad. If you get into a car wreck on your way to the office and you don't get it submitted, too bad. Like it is, that, at least in my experience, is that strict. So don't wait until the last day. Because it's also not just you. You have to depend on OSP and our authorized organizational representative to hit the final submit button. So if something happens to them, you're out of luck. Don't wait. I put the key, the star on program officer recommendation because that's the big thing. You either get awarded or, no, that's the thing. They are going to recommend award or recommend decline. There is still a step after that. It goes to their supervisor, the division director to review. I put be a reviewer if possible. Now, it's not likely that you would be able to be a reviewer for career before submitting for career, but if you can be a reviewer for another program, it still gives you really great experience, especially if you're not planning on submitting for career this summer. It gives you a little more time. And the ways to get clued in or on a reviewer list is reaching out to program officers, sending them your CV or bio sketch sort of thing. Some programs, at least in my division, actually had survey monkeys where you could fill out a survey and indicate your interest in being a reviewer, and we would choose from that. So see how it works for your program. I added this as just kind of a side note that if you've submitted to the NSF or probably even other funding agencies before, it takes a while to hear back. Usually the goal is to get about 75% of awards and declines out within 6 months. That means probably a quarter of proposals aren't even hearing until after 6 months. And so when you're thinking about a potential start date for your proposal, I would go at least 6 months out. You can put a start date up to a year past the deadline. So anywhere from like 6 months to a year is usually a good spot. You'll want to choose the 1st or 15th of the month for your start date. All right, so what goes into a proposal? And we're going to come back to the timeline thing. That's the other activity I have that I thought I'd give you a little more of this. If this looks like a lot, it's because it is. It's like you're writing a whole research article, the 15 pages, and then having to do like 20 extra pages of stuff, not really 20, a lot of extra pages of supplementary stuff. So what you'll have a cover sheet that's built in research.gov. You should have a research.gov account. You'll have a one-page summary which has the specific headings of overview, intellectual merit, and broader impacts. And that's what reviewers will see first. And then you'll have a 15-page or up to 15-page project description that does not include references, which will be a separate document, but that's really the heart of the proposal. That's where you're describing what your project would be. You'll have a budget and budget justification. OSP will help you with that, and you'll want to contact them early to get started with it. There are personnel documents that you have to have. Since this is a single PI proposal, it should just be you having these personnel documents, but you'll need your own bio sketch. This is a new one with the latest PAPG list of synergistic activities, current and pending support, which tells the reviewers and the program officers what else you have funded or is pending funding, as well as the project you're submitting, the career one. And collaborators and other affiliations, so that would be like listing people you publish with, your research advisor, anybody that could have a conflict of interest, really. And so there's 4 personnel documents that you'll have to have. Now, BioSketch, current and pending support are, you have to build through ScienceCV, a template that's online, which you need research.gov or an NSF account to access. Synergistic activities, they haven't gotten that up and running yet, so it's just build your own Word document, I think. And collaborators and other affiliations is an Excel file template. I think all of that is on OSP's website. So I have that link at the end of the slides. And then there's even more supplementary documents. There's a facilities, equipment, and other resources document where you describe what equipment do we have at JMU, what's your office computer situation like? Are you going to be making use of people on campus, IT folk, I don't know, other staff maybe? Those would be human resources, anything like that. And then data management plan. They want to know what data are you collecting, how are you storing it, how is it secure, how are you sharing it, stuff like that. And then for career, you'll need your department letter, and you could potentially have other letters of collaboration. Those have to follow template language, which is specified in the solicitation. These are the sort of things, don't start from scratch. Ask a friend, ask, workshop presenters, colleagues, people that have submitted to the NSF in your department, ask to see theirs. Because, like, the facilities document, if there's someone that does it, in your department that's submitted recently, you can probably use a lot of what they have. And there are data management plan builders on the library's website, but I find that it's easier to just start with an existing one that's similar and provide those needed. So, yeah. Any questions on that stuff?
Do we have a repository of like facilities, equipment, and other resources?
We should. My office has tried to build one and has not gotten responses from people. So we do have template language for a few departments such that have responded, but it is very limited. I'm happy to share what we have.
But I think because we in Virginia, we currently don't have the core facility yet, right? So a lot of those will have a kind of department home, and then if it's between colleges, you get even.
I would go to the most recent person in your department that just got funded.
Yeah.
Same for the RUI statements. We tend to pass those around. So.
I'm building one for size.
Nice.
I just sent him some information, but it's almost there.
Okay. So I mentioned OSP, I don't know if I spelled out the acronym yet, but that's the Office of Sponsored Programs. You'll want to talk to them early and often. Really, as soon as you're sure that you're going to go for a career, I would let them know. They'll assign you a particular kind of liaison from their office to work with you to help create your budget, and get everything ready, and they'll guide you through what they're kind of their side of things with the proposal process. Technically, you can submit through research.gov or grants.gov. Don't do grants.gov. Just don't. Yeah, do research.gov. If you don't have an NSF ID, you can get one now. You don't have to wait until like the week before your proposal. Do it now. You'll have to, so you can start getting the ID process yourself, but you'll have to have OSP kind of connected to JMU as an organization. And so you want to give them time to do that. They have started third-party authorization. Technically, you can do OCTA or Google. Don't do Google. At least in my experience, that's what I started with, and then it let me in the first time, and then I went back a month later, and it didn't, and I had to have them reset it, and I went with OCTA. OCTA, am I pronouncing that right? Octa or OCTA?
Octa, I think.
I'm terrible with pronunciation. Octa is what JMU's moving to anyway. Hopefully you've all done the Octa thing that you're supposed to do, because it's going to switch over from Duo to Spring Break. So it's real convenient to just have both NSF and JMU in that Octa app.
I'm sorry, I think Wayne has a question.
Oh, sorry.
Quick
Yeah.
question, I know we were laughing, but about the grant.gov and research, why we don't, because I was hung up by that at once. What's the difference?
I think, from what I remember, grants.gov does not have as much tech support. It takes them longer for the submission to go through. So like, if you look at the career proposal timeline that they have posted on their website, they're like, if you do grants.gov, you need to submit like at least 2 days earlier just to make sure it has time to get processed. And I think I thought it was even getting phased out, that it was just going to be, I don't know if that's true or not, so don't hold me to it, but it's much preferred to do research.gov. And I found, like, when I had the Google verification issue with research.gov, r.gov, and contacted their help people, it was fixed within hours. Like, they're very, at least when I've had to reach out to them, very quick to fix things and respond. If you do have anything happen the day of submission, like on your screen it shows that it's submitted and I don't know, something happens, take screenshots because you can submit those for special cases later.
Grants.gov is used for other federal agencies. For example, if you submit to the U.S. Geological Survey, you have to go through grants.gov. So there are some areas where you have to use that one.
I see.
Yeah, thanks for that. And another deadline to be aware of, you have to submit certain things to OSP at least 5 business days before you submit your grant. One of them is the internal approval form, which requires signatures from your supervisor and dean or college person that signs things, which for us is Steve. And then you also have to give them at least the latest version of your project description, which is hopefully more or less done. And they have to have your budget justification. And if you are in a situation where you have like overload or something like that, there's a few extra forms. And so at least 5 days. I would go earlier than that because I've had a situation where I was doing the 5 days and then we had like a snow day and OSP wasn't in the office and you lose a day. So always don't wait till the last minute. But I think, yeah, this is where I want to do my other activity, to build a proposal timeline. So I've told you a whole bunch of things that go into a proposal. I've told you some deadlines, like it's 5-day. I thought I would let you all try to put this all into a timeline starting from when the deadline for career is. And you can work on it on this paper, but if you like to get up and move around, I also put these things on sticky notes, and we can create a timeline at the board. So maybe what I'll do is go over there, and who wants to come and do the bigger timeline that then we'll compare as a class, if you will. Gov account. Get that going if you haven't already. Set up that third-party authentication or whatever. And then if you didn't already have a JMU NSF Associate ID, make sure you contact OSP and get that connection established. Once you have that connection established, you can create your proposal. You can get it going, kind of whenever. And you'll get a temporary proposal ID, and you can let OSP know, this is my temporary proposal ID. You don't have to start it this early, but I kind of like it. One of the things I like about research.gov, once you have that proposal started, is it on the left side panel, it really has all those documents, personnel documents, and other things that you're going to have to upload, including some things that are optional that you won't have to, which can be stressful. But and there's a warnings and errors button, and you can click on that to see, okay, here's the things that you really have to submit that right now it's telling you don't have. Or if you put something in, it'll say this didn't get uploaded correctly or whatever. So it's nice to see that ahead of time or early on, so you can kind of get used to the system and know what's expected. Okay, so that's going to be early on. Read the solicitation and the proposal section of the PABG. Yep. Discuss potential submission with your AUH. That would be good to do.
Especially since they have to write a letter.
Right, especially because of that. Contact a program officer and have a meeting. Do that early. Ask colleagues or workshop presenters for example documents, or if you have something built in your college where you can see things, that's a good thing too. At some point, early-ish, go ahead and start that 15-page project description. It's going to take you a little while. So now we're into April. Start the budget draft with OSP. Yeah, that's great. I think we have that. That was a little earlier than I put, but I think earlier is better. So yes, go ahead, start it. Reread the solicitation PABG. I would actually move that to July. Reread. I mean, you can reread it then too, but at least do it before you actually submit. So that could be multiple places.
Question.
Yeah.
Did you say it won't change 90 days before?
90 days before, they won't change now. The caveat there is they could, say end of April is about that 90-day, right? They could put a new one out at the beginning of May and just push the deadline back a little bit.
And the three of you that were preparing for NSF Leaps know that they had a due date in January, and then they moved it to archived in December, and it caused a lot of heartburn.
That's hard.
That's hard. And now it's due in April.
I would check it 90 days before. Probably check again a little later just to make sure. You can also get on NSF listservs that you get notified for a particular directorate when new solicitations come out. So.
And a program officer will probably have an inkling that something's coming up as well. So they might give you a heads up, hey, keep an eye out.
Alright, I guess down here, we're around June. Maybe start those supplementary documents, data management plan, facilities, personnel documents. You do have to wait for some of the personnel documents till you've got your r.gov NSF account all set up. And then early July, or at least 5 days before, so I put, let's see, I would say by July 14th at the latest, have the internal approval form and stuff to OSB, have all the signatures, all that ready. And then submit, I would plan at the latest for that to be July 21st. That's a Monday. Sorry if I'm taking up too much time.
No, it's your time. I will just give a shout out. My office does put together timelines. Obviously, everyone has their own preference for how close to the deadline they like to work, but we do put together timelines if anyone requests.
And you can reach out to me if you're in size
Yeah.
for that.
Timelines are great, even if you don't stick to it. Yeah, that's okay. All right, let's talk some about reviewing the review criteria. the NSF-Y criteria are intellectual merit and broader impacts. So every review is going to be, should be reviewer comments in these categories. Intellectual merit, this is kind of a brief generic description, but it's what the NSF has to describe it. How important is the proposed activity to advance knowledge? And the kind of innovative or novel aspect of it that we talked about, that to me goes in that intellectual merit as well. Is it novel? Is it interesting? What are the qualifications of the PI? What's your expertise? Do you have that preliminary data sort of thing? Your, qualifications of your institution? And is everything well reasoned and organized? You don't want something that's thrown together that comes across to reviewers. That's why you want to start early and really have a thoughtful project described where reviewers can really understand what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. What are you doing? How are you doing it? When are you doing it? Broader impacts. How would your research be applied? Why would the general public care? Who would benefit? And are you going to be disseminating? And if you can go beyond just the publications and presentations side of dissemination, that would be great, because everybody does that or says they're going to do that. The more different things you can put in dissemination, the better. That stands out.
Involving students in that, it goes all in that.
Yeah, very good point. And then the additional thing for career is that integration of research and education. How does the reciprocal relationship between those two happen? And how do they inform each other in your career development? So there's 3 types of reviewing that can happen. It could be ad hoc. That's where it goes out to individuals, and they individually send back their comments on intellectual merit, broader impact, and so on, without talking to other reviewers. That means they don't have a chance to kind of calibrate their review. Like maybe they missed something in the proposal or misunderstood it, and so they can be a little rougher sometimes. But that's one way of getting reviews, especially if it's a program that maybe doesn't have a whole lot of career proposals and they're not able to do full panels. There might be panels where reviewers actually come together. Well, they submit their individual review, but then they come together, discuss. Usually would have a panel summary where it summarizes that discussion, and you get that feedback. It could be a combination. And for career, they have a webinar posted on their website, by the way, and so I got this from the webinar. It's kind of a breakdown across some of the divisions on how they do that reviewing. So you can see ad hoc and panel, just panel, and so on. So there's a variety of methods here. And they said you can ask how yours would be reviewed if you want to know. You can't ask who's reviewing it, of course, but you can ask how it will be reviewed.
Which of the process that the proposal is going to go?
Yeah. Yeah, would it be just panel, ad hoc, or both? Mm-hmm. Yep.
Is it like very typical that they do 2 panel? Because I was at the NSF panel before, and they were telling me they would do first like external panel, which is including the panelists that they recruit from different universities, institute, and then they would do another internal review that's only the NSF.
If you couldn't hear his question, is it typical to do an external panel, bringing in experts from the field, and then following up with an internal NSF panel?
Yeah.
That's not something, so again, I didn't work on career panels when I was there, so in my division with the programs I work on, we didn't do that. We sometimes would do a panel and then follow up with ad hoc reviews if we felt we were missing some sort of expertise from the panel. But I don't know for sure if that happens often for career or not.
But this would be something that we can ask if you.
Yeah.
My understanding is that, for example, engineering does career panels very differently than a lot of other groups because they have a million
So many
of
of them.
them that get submitted. and so they have potentially multiple stages of
Yeah,
going
I
through
think
these things.
that makes sense to me. I think
Yeah. And-
it's similar for like GRFP, or is that the acronym, the graduate program, where they get so many proposals that like, even if you're on a panel, you may not get discussed because they only discuss the top however many, because they're looking at dozens and dozens on a proposal. Whereas some of our review panels, at least like in my division, if we had a career panel, it'd be like 10 proposals on the panel, and all of them get reviewed and discussed, because it's, you know, not dozens of those. So yeah, that varies.
Thank you.
If you get contacted, so this is after submission now, you've submitted, you've waited however many months, an NSF program officer contacts you. That means they're doing what's called opening up negotiations, which is a great thing. It doesn't mean you're guaranteed the award, but it means you're getting close. And so they might ask for something like budget revisions, clarifications, IRB approval if it's human research, stuff like that. So that's a good sign. If you don't get contacted by a PO with this, you'll get an email saying, we declined. Which, to be honest, is, you know, happens more often than not. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Does having a pending IRB while submitting the proposal help in any way, or that is?
It's not bad. It's not a bad idea, because one of the things you'll check off on the cover sheet is whether you have IRB pending or not, and it's good to have that in the process. But it doesn't mean you don't have to. I lean towards not starting IRB when I'm putting in a proposal, because then if it doesn't get funded, it's kind of a waste. If I'm not going to be able to do the research without the funding, you know, if you're going to do the research anyway, get your IRB, you know, ducks in a row there. But the first thing, at least in my experience, the first thing a program officer will ask for in negotiation is sometimes, if you haven't done IRB yet, start it. Because they kind of need that before.
Won't do the award, the final award, until you,
We,
it varies. but,
yeah, most of the time you won't, unless you're running up on the end of the fiscal year and they're like, okay, we'll give you an exception, but you have to tell us when you get your IRB, and if you don't have it within however many months, then you're in trouble, sort of thing. But yeah, so I have found, if you haven't worked with JMU's IRB, it's been very fast, and so they're great here.
Wasn't always that way, but it's kind of.
Yeah. If there's declines, make sure you look at the reviews, read the program officer comments if they give you those, and after a while, when you're ready, if you think you want to try again, meet with the program officer.
Do we also get a score on our proposal when it's declined? along with the
Usually proposals, and Gina can let me know if this is how it works for career. Proposals are ranked not competitive, competitive, or highly competitive. And so you'll see that, and then you'll also see the individual reviewers. So that's the panel ranking if it's paneled. And then you'll have your individual reviews, and they'll rank it anywhere from the lowest is poor, poor, fair, good, very good, excellent are the rankings, and so you get one of those. All right, and this is my last, well, almost not, the last one's my contact info. I just included some links in case they share the slides with you all. With there's a paper that our math and stat unit head wrote about writing effective proposals, career FAQs from their NSF website, OSP's forms with some of those templates that you'll need. And this is just fun stuff that I like to tell people about because not everybody knows. Like you can see funding rates for directors and stuff like that. It's cool stuff.
I'll just mention the webinar that you mentioned. I actually have a link to that at the end of my slides.
All right.
So.
And I didn't leave a whole lot